You are living in the most dangerous time in American history.
We won't take a single back step.
Former professional basketball player is now the Republican Party's choice.
Can you imagine Royce White, the U.S. Senate?
White won the endorsement on May 18th with 67% of the vote.
There's nothing that guarantees we win, but I guarantee you if we lose, we will die. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Please Call Me Crazy, brought to you by Free People Radio, powered by our favorite sponsor, TireGet.com. That's TireGet.com. You have to buy tires from somebody. You might as well buy them from us and help fund the movement, help support the movement. We believe in the freedom of movement, and that's exactly what the establishment wants to take from you now. I'm your host, Royce White, here in the belly of the beast, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Today, we have another incredible family and friends guest episode. We are joined by legendary Matt Gaetz, former Congress member Matt Gaetz, now political talk show host Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz was somebody who endorsed me and has supported me in my run for United States Senate back in 2024, now again in 2026. And more so than anything, I like Matt Gaetz because he's young, and he's got balls. He's got cojones. He's got huge MAGA cojones. And pause, okay? I don't want to talk about another man's balls, but he's got courage. He's got that type of, alpha male sort of, no nonsense, just tell it to you like it is, MAGA energy. And we need it. We need it, and the whole, we lost a great man there in the Congress during this last cycle. And he tried to serve, and the Senate blocked him again. United States Senate, they wouldn't confirm him. They'll take a Republican, they'll take President Trump, but Matt Gaetz, that's a little too far for us. And it's because he stood up in the well of the Congress and he said, this entire body is hollowed out by special interests and lobby money. And you have to respect that. If you're somebody out there on either side of the political aisle, wherever you are on the political spectrum, and you believe that special interests and lobby money has a stranglehold on American politics, you don't like what you see when these corporate lobbies have so much blatant influence over our politicians and over D.C., then the Matt Gaetz of the world are your guy. And it goes for myself, too. You could disagree with us, no problem. You're not going to agree 100% with any candidate, with any politician, and you shouldn't. If you agree 100% with any of us, I'm questioning your sacred honor, right? Your integrity as a citizen, as an American citizen. I'm questioning you if you agree 100%. But I guarantee you, if you take an objective view of the Matt Gaetzes of the world, you'll find somebody who you agree with much more than you disagree, and because he's willing to call out the corruption. Now, if we lived in a society, all things equal, fair, then maybe the need to call out corruption wouldn't be so urgent. And people like myself or Matt Gaetz or even President Trump wouldn't get so many points, you could say undeserved if you want, for just calling out corruption. But at a time where people are willing to lie, as much as we see in our society, especially in the higher consolidation of power, as much as people are willing to lie, it is a gift. It is a talent. It is a special attribute to have the courage to call that out. And Matt Gaetz is one of those individuals. So we're happy to have him on the show. I hope you enjoyed the interview. Pardon me if I get a little excited talking to Matt Gaetz, his two friends. And, I think that, today we just got going on sports and some other things. But I hope you enjoyed the interview as much as I did. And we're going to try and get Matt Gaetz on as much as we can. Again, young MAGA voices, elected officials who are willing to call a spade, call the balls and strikes as he sees it. So without further ado, the great Matt Gaetz. Welcome, Matt Gaetz, to Please Call Me Crazy. We're happy and honored to have you on the show this evening. This is the first time we get you in the the long format of Please Call Me Crazy. I definitely appreciate all the times you've had me on your show and the tremendous amount of support you've shown me in my 2 campaigns here in Minnesota. My first 2024 against Amy Klobuchar. The people are coming now again in 2026 for the vacant Tina Smith seat. She's resigning, and we got a whole host of radical Democrats running for her replacement there, most of which are probably crazy of which is Peggy Flanagan, our current lieutenant governor, with the Protect Trans Kids with the Knife shirt. So I'm up against it here in the belly of the beast. But it's great to have you on, sir. I can't wait to talk to you. How are things going for you?
I'm speaking to you from the One America News headquarters here. I host the Matt Gaetz show every night, 9 o'clock Eastern, 6 Pacific, and get to talk to my friends for an hour every night about what's going on in the news. You obviously, chief among them, have come on to share your perspective on a number of matters. And look, man, it's a crazy time right now. We're speaking in the middle of a shutdown, possibly resolution of these hostilities in the Middle East. Someone that, you and I both knew as a towering figure in the conservative movement, Charlie Kirk assassinated, still sort of dealing with the grief and aftermath of all of that. And at the same time, there's pretty good sign in this economy that things are turning up. I mean, he's beating the growth estimates every time. I think that elements of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act are coming online and giving people more buying power, more consumer confidence. And so, the deportations are rolling along. We're seeing now, kind of as we look over the fence at what the Democrats have got cooking, it seems the only guy with a plan is Newsom. And that plan is just to steal the congressional majority from Republicans with raw power in a state that will allow it, probably. And that probably is going to shape a lot of how we think about which party is the great defender of democracy, because Joe Biden and Kamala Harris had been preaching that they were the vanguards of that, and that without them, democracy would certainly fall. And now it's Gavin Newsom's spasm to just tell a bunch of people that instead of the voters picking their representatives, that the representatives are now going to pick their voters. And that's kind of where we find ourselves. Well, how are you seeing the world right now, my friend?
Crazy time we're living in. Let's take them piece by piece. First, I want to ask you about, because I know you've been one of the biggest critics, and rightfully so, and I think level and sane critics of our previous relationship with Israel, or how we've been, connected to and supported, or, the entire kind of deal we have working with Israel in the last year. Let's start right there. I mean, let's get right to the nitty gritty here. What Israel and what's been happening with our relationship with Israel up until now in terms of their influence over Congress and the PAC money and up, leading up to October 7th, if you can. And then, kind of this referendum point here in the MAGA and America First movement, where we were on the brink of war with Iran, or we kind of started the 12-day war with Iran, came to a conclusion. Where are you at? And even more so, how has it affected you personally to step out there and talk about Israel in this way as of late?
Well, I believe that on the right, we have to have a coalition that includes people who are fully supportive of a robust relationship between the United States and Israel on almost any terms. And I think we also have to have room for people who think that they can ask fair questions about where that relationship draws us in unnecessary conflicts, makes us unnecessary enemies, and perhaps draws on our blood and our treasure too much. So I'm not someone who wants to divorce. One of my very good friends is Kurt Mills at the American Conservative. He says, I want a divorce from the Zionists. And then there are some people who really are Zionists who think that people who ask questions like Tucker Carlson does, or like I do, that we ought to be excommunicated from the movement. So I want to start by saying, when this is all over and everybody has their debate and we decide what the policy position of the Republican Party is, I'm not trying to kick anybody out, and I'm not trying to be kicked out over this issue. I think there's still a lot that is going right for the MAGA movement and the American right. At the same time, I just think that Netanyahu has really serious domestic problems. And I think that he has held on to power a long time, and he doesn't want to lose power. And I think that the way he is holding on to power now is by externalizing his conflicts, by causing all kind of trouble with his neighbors. I have real questions about October 7th and why there seemed to be a reduction in force when you typically see IDF shoulder to shoulder in this part of Israel. And I worry that now he's using this terrible event that occurred on October 7th that we all condemn, that we all believe was not an appropriate way. It was a heinous, murderous, terrible way, terrorist way for Hamas to achieve their goals. But now Israel's using it as a basis to go invade Lebanon and draw America into a war with Iran that I think, but for President Trump, we would probably already be in that war. It's because of President Trump's leadership that we're not there. And I think that there is not a lot of critical voice in Congress because people are afraid of getting on the wrong side of the pro-Israel lobby.
Right.
And the reason they're afraid of that is that lobby group is incredibly knowledgeable about the positions of members of Congress. They suss you out. They don't let you hide on this issue. They make demands that you sign various letters or commit to various policy proposals or pieces of legislation. And then they resource the opposition very extensively. And we've seen this on the left. I mean, they got rid of Cori Bush. They got rid of Jamal Bowman. And admittedly, those candidates had some other stuff going on. But on the right, there is almost a slavish loyalty to Israel that is driven in part by the fear of Republican members that they might be targeted by the pro-Israel lobby. And the pro-Israel lobby is not just Jewish donors. It's also a lot of pro-Israel Christians.
One moment. So if you had to assign a value or a percentage, what percentage of the people in Congress are afraid to talk about this issue because they may be targeted and defeated in their own races, and what percentage are actually devout, what you would call, evangelical Zionists or Protestant Christian Zionists? Or do you have any real sense of that split since you spent so much time there?
I would say there's probably, look, in the Republican conference, where at any given day you got about 224 members. I mean, you don't have 5% who are really eager to get out there and talk about it. There's a few folks like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massey, but I mean, maybe what is that, 1%? And so I think of the remaining 99%, what you have are maybe a third who are sincerely believing that God is calling them to place the U.S.-Israel relationship in this special place in policymaking, that is what their faith demands of them. And probably the remaining 2/3 view it as a practicality, just as a way of Washington, that this is an easier path to get a committee chairmanship, to get invited on a foreign trip you might want to go to, and I've been on plenty of them. So I'm not suggesting anyone who goes on foreign trips is bad, but it is a carrot that the system uses to control behavior.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, and I've been called anti-Semitic as much as any candidate, maybe at least running for United States Senate.
Do you have bigoted views toward people because they're Jewish? I don't.
I certainly don't. I mean, I have so many.
You've never said anything bad about people as a consequence of their faith in the hours of conversations I've had with you.
It depends on what you say is bad. I mean, it's kind of, and I said this before, it's kind of the identity politics of the right. It's the woke right. They call us the woke right for criticizing or even questioning Israel's policies, but I view them as the woke right because in the same way, if a black person, in some of these Democrat strongholds stands up and goes, maybe there's a problem with young black men shooting each other, then you're racist. If you say, I don't think I like Bibi Netanyahu's policy, or I don't even think I like his particular set of actions on this one issue, or this one, war.
He's a talented cat, though. I mean, that guy's an orator, isn't he? He is a talented guy, and I think he's like a boomer. So he sits around watching Fox News and being like, "I've got to get on there and talk about everything and make everything about me."
Right.
And it can cause resentment in the body politic in the United States when you see this tiny country in the Middle East demand the focus and attention and resources in all of these skirmishes.
And again, Matt, I take it kind of personal because I sit here and go, as a young Republican candidate in this country who obviously has to deal with the blatant landscape of identity politics that lays before us. There's no escaping it. It has become the MO of our entire political culture in some sense. And yeah, I'm a black Republican, and there's nothing wrong with saying that. There's nothing wrong with saying I'm black. There's nothing wrong with saying I'm a Republican. There's nothing wrong with saying I'm MAGA. I'm ultra MAGA. And so, but if I'm a black candidate and I can talk about other black people having problems in their community, and it is their community, and I can name them by their black identity, the fact that I can't say that there's a Jewish lobby or a Jewish elite in this country that has political influence just seems like
they say it. It's literally the mission statement of their own organizations.
It's a non-starter.
The mission statement of like the Zionist Organization of America, AIPAC, is that they want to put this relationship first, that they have specific policy goals, and the people who are supportive have an identity that they believe this organization ought to serve. And that's fine. I think in a world in which you have a First Amendment, people ought to be able to express. If people believe in Israel first, they ought to go and have a platform and a right to express it.
No doubt.
What I don't abide is the system that encourages lawmakers to ignore the best interests of their constituents in service of these goals that are not genuinely emerging.
But here's the thing, Matt. It's of anybody else. If it was China, if it was some Japan, if it was India, and you and I being in the MAGA movement, and the president is doing a fantastic job, and I want to ask you about that in a moment here. But he took this trip over to the UK, and he sat with Charles and all these people and whatnot, and there's a big celebration. It was beautiful. Don't get me wrong, it was beautiful. But as a America First during MAGA, I'm just like, we're not European. We're certainly not of the British Empire or the Commonwealth. So if we can say it about
Trump has this challenge where the world saw America as a country who had elected like a dementia ward escapee. And so there was so much of the brand that had been eroded during Biden, and he was such an embarrassment on the global stage. I think Trump has really had to deal with that.
Repair the image.
Because there are real consequences. Putin never would have invaded Ukraine when Donald Trump was president.
Of course.
But now that they're embroiled in this war and egos and territory and narrative and all this, it's becoming very challenging for President Trump to address. But the image that he's trying to portray with some of these foreign trips, I think, is restorative more than it is like the organizing principle of who he is, why we elected him, what our goals are to save this country.
No doubt. And I'm critical of a lot of things just because that's just who I am. But I don't like the royal family. I think they're full of shit. I think they're, everything that's wrong with the post-World War II Democrat liberal order, God save the Queen, all of that is bullshit to me. But my point in saying it was we would have just as much of a problem, and we do in many ways have just as much of a problem, of any foreign entity or any demographic of people outside of American citizens that have undue influence on our politics, on our D.C. elected officials, on the system, on any of it. So it's not even particular to Jews or Israel. And they kind of tell on themselves when they go, well, why do you have a problem with us? We have a problem with anybody who has undue influence on this country that isn't of this country.
George Washington warned about it.
Right.
in his addresses to the country. This is we are a people as Americans who are naturally skeptical of excessive foreign entanglements,
Right.
and part of that is our Genesis story. Part of that is our geography, and it does not emerge out of anti-Semitism or a dislike of someone's identity. Just when we're asking questions like, "Hey, what is the plan for Gaza? Is it just to level the place and make it completely unlivable? Is that the plan? Is that the end state? Well, how many people have to die to achieve that? And how does that make you any safer? Does anyone really believe that the current state of Gaza has Israel as a safer country? I fear and loathe the fact there's probably a lot of terrorists being created as a consequence of this.
Yeah.
And the victims of those events are victims being created by choices now that I think are very avoidable. And I hope that that's what's happening with this summit in Egypt. I hope President Trump is able to just use alpha male energy to get these folks to agree to his 21-point plan that seems eminently reasonable.
Yeah. And he's done a great job so far bringing peace to a lot of different places in the world. And, blessed are the peacemakers, no doubt. And if he can bring a peace here, then that is obviously the desired outcome. Enough of the Israel. The Israel thing, I just see you as somebody who's been out front, saying some things that were shocking to many. I always see some of my favorite moments on the internet right now are when you find people in the comment sections of any piece of content that's related to Israel, and they go, I find myself agreeing with Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene. What's happening in the world? Right?
I get that a lot.
Yeah.
I get that when I start talking about marijuana reform. When I talk about some of my foreign policy views. When I talk about the fact that we should not allow big corporations in America to just go totally unchecked. That they actually have to be subject to reviews of their market power. These are things where there's a unifying populism that is a growth strategy for the Republican Party, and I think it's an interesting topic because before we came on, I was reviewing some of the maps in Minnesota of when Republicans win. You're running statewide there. You've run statewide there before, and my first thought was this is not even really a winnable state. You can't really win this state. They've let too many people come here who didn't want to assimilate, and they just have a static voting pattern. Trump only lost Minnesota by 4 points.
Right.
And so if you believe Trump is a high watermark, maybe it's not winnable. But if Trump is really the front end of the wave of this realignment and he got it going, and there's going to be more of the growth sectors of the movement as a consequence of Trump, a state that we lost by 4 points might be a state where we're winning by 4 points in 2 or 3 election cycles. And I don't know if it gets there for you, but I went and looked at the results of Tim Pawlenty, who won as the governor, Republican governor, back in 2006.
Yeah.
And you actually do way better in the rural areas than he did, and he won as a Republican. But where he did better were some of the suburbs around St. Paul.
Yeah, that's a problem.
And so I wonder, what do those voters want? I guess is my question.
Here's the math in Minnesota, Matt, and it's reflective of the math all across the country. The minority and inner city vote is going to continue to slide. Well, first of all, we got to get our elections secure. That's number one. We got to make sure that these elections are as secure as we can possibly get them, and they certainly are far cry from that. That's why Amy Klobuchar said in 2018, oh my goodness, the machines, they can be hacked. Now all of a sudden 2020s, they can't be hacked. In 2024, it's conspiracy theory. I don't know how it works. You could say better than me. But the math in Minnesota is a microcosm of the math in the country where there was an estimate, and I asked ChatGPT just to see where AI is on the whole deal. And they said there was an estimated 1.4 million conservative and Christian crossovers that didn't even vote in 2024 in the state of Minnesota. So you got 3 things happening there. Either A, they voted, they're being counted wrong, or B, they weren't being counted, or C, they actually didn't vote. All 3 of them pose a problem, but I think on the optimistic side, I do, and that number is 30 million nationwide. That 30 million Christians, estimated Christians, didn't vote in a voter age.
But do you know any of these people? Because I do, and I think I know why they don't vote.
Well, I do know them, and here's the thing. And I go around the state all day, all week, all year long. I've been doing it for the last 3.5 years now. And I have to say that there is a Christian vote out there that doesn't vote. And there's a Christian.
I don't know if they ever are voting because, they just they say, look, there's a spiritual battle going on between good and evil. Good wins in the end. This is all of this kind of manly, worldly quest for power. This isn't even what really decides anything. God's what makes the decisions. I'm not going to vote. I'm not going to participate in that worldly scuffle. I'm going to read my Bible. I'm going to pray. I'm going to prepare my family for the afterlife by giving our life to God and surrendering to Jesus Christ. And they view participation in our political system almost like, going to bad websites on the internet. What would you say to a voter who had that perspective?
Well, my first thought is hold the contradiction. I mean, I have to vote for policies or people who support Israel in an undying sort of way, but then I ignore the parts of the Old Testament or the Torah that show that people of God, even prophets such as David, and the scripture says that David has a heart after the Lord's, he's a man after the Lord's own heart. I have to vote for Israel, but when David is a expressly political figure, somehow my Christian formulation is I'm completely out of politics. That's not. And so my point to you, and even bringing it up, and I'm glad you made that point, is as a candidate, I'm sitting here and I'm going, is it really a referendum on me personally as a candidate, on a Matt Gaetz or even a President Trump? Had he lost, he didn't, but had he lost, is it really a referendum on us personally as candidates if we can't find some milquetoast coalition to win? And that's what I think it is. And when you bring up Tim Pawlenty, it's a great example where, there is a Nikki Haley constituency here in Minnesota. There's no doubt about it. As a MAGA candidate, should I try to appeal to them? Should I lie about the real issues, or should I sugarcoat it to try and get
I wonder what they want. Because I think a lot of those people, because look, we're in a state like Minnesota, you have to be in the game of addition, not subtraction and division.
Right.
And I think the value proposition is, look at what the other side's trying to look. The Tim Pawlenty voter, the Nikki Haley voter that's hanging out at the country club, and the person who spent their whole life to one day be the second recording secretary at the Chamber of Commerce. That voter might not immediately get down with you and all your homeboys like with chains around your neck saying you're going to shake up the system. But when presented that, or like the guy who wants to put tampons in the boys' bathroom, and the state that believes that gender blockers for children are okay before they get through the wonder years. I think those people want calm waters and normal, and they want to know that things are going to be all right. And just look at the shutdown we're in, right? The Republicans were like, tell you what our great plan is. Same deal that Joe Biden negotiated with Mitch McConnell and Schumer and Mike Johnson. That's good enough for us. We'll just kick the can down the road. And Democrats are like, no, we demand these credits be extended that include a bunch of our demands for funding for illegal aliens.
Right.
And I just think to that voter that you're trying to appeal to, our brand can carry a candidate, even like you, who has reformational goals probably beyond the comfort level of some Mitt Romney styled voters.
Right. Well, I think so. I mean, you would think so. You would definitely think so. But I can't tell you how much pushback I get here in the Republican Party. And I know you know well, because when I saw you stand up there in the well of the Congress and say this entire town was hollowed out, I know you weren't talking about only Democrats and the
No,
and
the Republicans left. They left as I was speaking. The Republicans would get up and leave.
There you go.
To show how to show how guilty they were.
Yeah.
To show how that they couldn't even sit there and listen to it. That PACs run that place.
But see, here's my question for you. Where is? See, because here's my. I mean, if you go down deep enough, and maybe it takes me another 3 election cycles to get this message through, like you said, maybe maybe the rally point for this populist movement isn't until 2036 or whatever the case. Whenever it is, it's going to happen. It has to happen. We have to continue to tell the truth. But my question to all of these middle market entrepreneurs, let's say, middle market business people, C-suite CEOs and whatnot, all of these companies, even here in Minnesota, you see it in the ag community or the farming community where, generations of dairy farms have been decimated over the last 10 years in Minnesota by what you spoke about, corporations too big, not applying good antitrust policy or law. What do some of these country club Republicans, middle market Republicans who are being squeezed out by Amazon and Apple, and what do they actually see in the free trade, free market, Koch brother Republican idea? It's squeezing them out. Or are they just thinking, I'm a boomer, I'm going to retire, so it's all good anyway? It's not really my deal.
I think you just laid out a really compelling message we have to those folks on economic terms. Not even on cultural terms, right? On economic terms, like, we want to fight for you.
Right.
Like, if you're someone who's built something and you maybe it's not like, a $30 million fortune, but maybe you've built a small business, a small farm, a piece of real estate, some asset class. Like, the other side is like hunting you down to redistribute that to illegal aliens. And we want to create some permission structure where that can be nurtured and can grow. It can be a feature of your life and your family. And, you might not have the exact same views we have on abortion, but this is central to your quality of life, and we will be there for you. I think that is the fundamental question almost every voter asks when they go in the ballot box. Who will fight for me? And I tried in my elections to convince people, even who hated me, even who thought that I was odious or uncouth, to be like, well, if my uncle has a VA claim, that guy will actually bear down and go fight to get it paid and will help us. And my job approval ratings were always way higher than my actual personal approval ratings, because I think people were like, well, we can like him or not like him, but he's not bought. And that's what I've always been interested in. If we can get you into the United States Senate, it's such an injection of sincerity to a place that so badly needs it. Because in most conversations I've had with senators, outside of my brief time in the confirmation cyclone, they were just balancing interest groups. Like, you'd go talk to them about a bill or an amendment, and they'd be like, well, this group hasn't signed off on it yet. That group has signed off. This group's opposed.
Is that really how it is?
And it's just like, all right, well, fine. I guess I'll just go talk to them. And I guess when I get all the lobbyists on board, you'll just be an outgrowth of that, a feature of that. But I actually think you would show up and have some ideas. And they would
really how it is,
great.
Matt?
Yes.
When I first decided to run for, it's my opinion that the United States Senate is running the whole thing. I mean, they're the last bastion of the deep state. People who don't want to acknowledge that, then they don't really understand.
I think you're underselling Article 3 judges a little bit.
Okay, well,
I think that's the real last bastion.
Fair point, Mr. Lawyer. I agree with you. Okay, you touche. I'm just a lowly candidate here. I didn't go to legal law school. Maybe I should actually. I probably drop a hammer there too if I did the
Let's go.
the time. Yeah.
You would
I need to get sponsored to a nice conservative law school though. So.
Well, you would be a shoo-in for the law school basketball team.
Oh man, yeah. Hey, if I could get my eligibility back, we might make a deep turning run.
Let's go.
No. So
there's that 5 for 5. What do you think about actually? Since we're talking about athletics, what do you think about this NIL stuff in college? These players getting their money. And look, I've got a call me crazy take that people aren't going to really like.
All right.
But I'll lay it out for you. Yeah. I actually think some of these players should be getting paid. You look at a system that for generations has paid the rich white administrators oftentimes on the back of poor black kids. Like, I'm not one who thinks that there's structural and institutional racism around every corner. I think it's mostly a myth, but I think you could probably sell me on it with the NCAA. where everybody who works there has like a Rolex, and yet you got some kid who's out there banging his head against some 290-pound defensive lineman, and you're saying he shouldn't be able to what? They were telling those kids they couldn't be eligible if they signed a few footballs for money.
No, they were telling.
Why should they be able to?
It was worse than that, Matt. There were kids who were getting hoodies from their respective universities, or people who were recruiting them and whatnot, and they were getting ruled ineligible for entire seasons. They lost entire seasons of eligibility for accepting a sweatshirt. It was crazy.
That's so ridiculous.
It was crazy.
While you have members of Congress accepting gold bars, some kid accepts a hoodie or takes a little bit of money to sign some.
You couldn't get a ride. You couldn't get a ride on a golf cart across the university campus after practice in the morning to make it to your class on the other side of a campus city. The University of Minnesota has one of the biggest footprints of any campus in the country. It's on two sides of a river. Imagine crossing the Mississippi River outside as an athlete after an 8 a.m. practice. And you got to go to the other
Minnesota.
In Minnesota in the winter.
I'm entirely sure people should live in Minnesota as humans, but certainly you should be able to get on a golf cart. But see, it was so crazy on that side. Now the pendulum swings, and I do think that the combination of the current NIL structure and the transfer portal creates like a super inflationary cycle.
No, they got to reel it in. They got to reel it in.
And I think President Trump's executive order acknowledges there's legitimate NIL, and that should be allowed. At the same time, you want college sports to continue to have value, and you want to continue to have fan buy-in as to the futures and development of these players. And there have to be tools for schools to be able to retain players, for donors to be able to know, hey, if this kid transfers, I'm not just left holding the bag. So I think there's a lot still going on in that space. But I mean, you lived it, you were there.
Yeah,
like,
what I say is this.
Is there a part of you that was like, damn, I wish that when I was like 6'8" in the post draining threes that somebody could have written me a $250,000 check to go play my sophomore year of basketball?
Well, I have two sons coming up now, and I plan to have more kids too, and they'll have a shot. Genetics does matter. In some ways you can.
You got to have the dog though, man.
Yeah, that's true.
I was talking to Shane Battier one time, and he's like, you know what, my kids are good. Like, they got the genetics, they're good. But Battier was like, I was a dog. He was like, I would stay at all night. I would turn on the lights. I'd have my mom turn on the lights of her car so I could just sit out there in the snow and shoot threes and shoot threes and shoot. He's like, my kids are good. I don't know that they've got like the dog mentality.
Well, it happens, really, and you can see why it happens, right? And there is something to be said for a work ethic that comes from the blue-collar community, that comes from blue-collar America, working-class people, even the poor. The boxing world is a perfect example where you look at Bud Crawford, who beat Canelo, and you have all of these, race-based, or you could say nationality-based in some cases, prototypes of the heavy.
That's always been boxing, by the
championship boxer, right?
The Great White Hope. Yeah.
Well, you got
the
Russians, right?
were like, they were like.
You got the Mexican
modern
brawlers.
Of Andrade. Yeah. You got there's always some like Irish white guy.
So I mean, it's one of those things where you can look at boxing and go, no matter how many different combinations of circumstances you put together, you find that the little poor black kid from the ghetto is a very formidable archetype, and you can argue a similar thing for professional sports like basketball and football. And there is something to the grit and toughness you get coming from the neighborhood, like I did. And then once a guy gets to the NBA and his parents, and I mean his child grows up in the suburbs and pretty wealthy, or relatively wealthy, versus how he grew up, it changes you. Which is it's a chip in the hat of nurture does matter. The way that you're developed does matter. The way that you grow up does matter. But something still to be said for being 7'5". I mean, Wemby's genetics are, definitely a bonus.
So if you're some kid, so if Royce White were to exist today, you could command six figures in payment each year for your college earning years.
And I think it's completely fair. I think here's the thing.
Yeah.
Here's the only problem. The problem is this. And I think it's a simple fix. You shouldn't be able to transfer however many times you want. That's crazy. You should be able to transfer once and then another time with some type of exception. Because I get, because if you don't do that, here's what happens. You have problems with your school. They don't give you what they promised, or they don't follow through with what they promised, which happens. All of these coaches are trying to recruit kids, and they'll promise them the world and just to get them on campus.
There's so many programs that are overpromised right now.
Oh, it's crazy.
Like Power 4 programs.
But this goes back to even when I was coming through, and when I say promises, I just mean anything they tell you on the because the goal is to get you to sign your letter of intent. Now you're bound by the legislative body, the NCAA. And so if you decide to transfer, you transfer once, and the next coach knows you can only transfer once. Once you transfer, he's got you by the kish, right? I mean, that's kind of how that deal would go. So you can't transfer unlimited times. You transfer once, second time with some type of, waiver. But, I do, on the coaching side of things, because I coach now, I do think there was something to be said for the purity of the game. When it was very community-based and you got a kid that was, from small-town Minnesota or from the Twin Cities, and he went to play for the Gophers like I tried to do, and the town rallies around him in a place that's usually pretty politically neutral and not supposed to be about culture and race, and whatnot, but it's supposed to be about determination, hard work, overcoming adversity, camaraderie, buying into something that's bigger than yourself, the great things that come from sports. And I think that we've lost some of that now in college basketball for sure. We lost it in professional sports a long time ago, and institutions have to find a way to bring that back, or else sports just becomes another cog in the radical materialist craze. And that's what sports has become. Is our athlete, and this is why your athletes went woke. This is why your athletes are willing to sell out and say, nothing wrong with the LGBTQ transgender movement with kids. Nothing wrong with China putting Uyghurs in concentration camps. Nothing wrong with vaccines that haven't been vetted properly. There's nothing wrong with any of it. The reason they're doing that is because there was an institutional decision and a societal decision that some amount, incrementally, moral hazard, as they call it in the financial world, some amount of moral decay is acceptable for the growth and expansion of said industry. And I don't agree with that. I think that we have to reel it in, across this entire post-industrial revolution society. We have to reel in the amount of slippage we're allowing with the morals and the ethics for the expansion of the business, right? And that was basketball. It's like, well, now, you're going to have kids get NIL deals when they're in the 8th grade and they're 6'6" in the 8th grade and they don't grow again. By the time they get to college, the coach isn't even going to be able to use them anymore because he's been getting fat and rich for 4 years.
But won't the market sort that out, Royce?
No.
Like won't there be some sort of system where traits are developed and analyzed, and people will win and people will lose on the money side? But I mean, what were we in I get what you're saying about the love of the game. And I used to, what people will say in the comments when we post this discussion is they'll say, well, they're getting a college education and there's such a value to a college education. Well, yeah,
a Marxist education.
Yeah, by the way, maybe when the TV deal was worth 1/25th of what it is worth today, and the value of a college education was really freaking important in the economy, maybe that was true. But right now, the value of the TV deal skyrocketed, and the value of the education plummeted. And you're saying we shouldn't adjust for that in some way? I think we probably should.
Yeah, no, I think sports is a great microcosm. People always give me shit on either side of the aisle. They're like, where are your credentials? You're just a basketball player that left early to go into the draft and didn't get his degree. And I'm like, America needs a coach. The thing I love about President Trump, and I think what a lot of people love about him without identifying it, he's a Vince Lombardi type. He's a John Wooden type. He's seen as America's, business savant, but really when you run a company like that, that has success, ongoing success, it's much like being a coach of a team.
Well, just the cabinet meetings.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, those cabinet meetings. I'll take it even a step further. He's almost like the point guard.
Right.
All right. Christy Nome, what are we doing on deportations? All right, Pam, how are we attacking weaponization? Bobby, how are we making people help? Like he's out there, dishing. And having a great team do a great job for him. And maybe that's why we get some peace in the Middle East.
No doubt.
Maybe that's why we actually push back against corporate power at HHS. I just love what Kennedy's doing over there because Kennedy is not using law or even enforcement action. He's using the threat of enforcement action to force big corporations to voluntarily change their ways. And it's like in other areas of government, people are like, well, I'm going to do this. Oh, well, some judge, just said an injunction. I guess we can't do that. Instead, Bobby Kennedy's like, no. I'm going to take you down the hallway on the long trip to the principal's office.
There you go.
And before we get to the principal's office and you find out what's going to happen there, you're going to have an opportunity to determine whether or not you're going to do the right thing, and whether it's getting the dyes out of the food, whether it's reducing some of the toxins. I mean, the guy is probably saving a whole hell of a lot of lives over there.
No, absolutely. And I think what America needs more than ever is an infusion of what made American sports and American athletes great on the world stage, without all of the commercialization of it. And you can look at this as a microcosm of, a free market. I love Milton Friedman, I'm all for some real capitalism, let's call it. But that's not what we have. We have a techno-feudal empire here. We have a technocracy. We have oligarchy. We have an obscenity. It's obscene what's happened in this country financially.
Do you think it's getting stronger or weaker? The major leagues, the NBA, NFL.
Yeah, I think here's what I'll say. I think the professional sports leagues are on a trajectory similar to the rest of society and industry, where they are ballooning in revenue and reach and influence. I mean, there's more NBA content accessible to more people than anything in human history. But I don't think the quality of the game has gotten exponentially better. I think people were, and also, I don't think that sports represents, small, blue collar, blue chip America, the little platoons of this country, like it used to. You used to look at.
Yeah, I mean, sports was the thing that when you got, off work with your buddies, you go down to the bar,
Yes.
Everyone has a $1 beer, catches a few innings of the game before going home and,
Yes.
getting on with your evening or whatever.
Yes.
And it was the thing you talked about when you back when people went to work, like you would go to work and somebody would wear a Dodgers hat, somebody would wear a Padres hat. You'd have a little feud about it, have something to talk smack about. Do you think it does? Do you think it still occupies that space in American culture?
No.
Or is it more a virtue signal?
I think that it's become extremely political and weaponized in how it's used. And I think most of all,
But a lot of those guys in those locker rooms are right wing, man. I learned that on the campaign trail because we would stop at different places and like you'd have we were in Vegas and like
they're like the house Christians in China.
Of those guys.
Matt, they're like
man, but they come.
They're like they're like the house Christians in China, right? They're hiding out of fear of persecution. It's like, it's like Kyrie Irving or something. Kyrie Irving, when you look back at it now, he was right. He was like, hold on, I don't really think I need that vaccine. I'm going to hold off. And they drug him through the ringer. He's one of the most talented basketball players of all time. Literally, Kyrie Irving may be the most skilled player of all time. He may be the skilled.
Most skilled?
He might be. No, he might be. I'm talking just pure skill. The things he can do on the court with the basketball. He may be the most skilled, pound for pound, given the fact that he's not super athletic. He's not big. He's not very tall. And he's not, profoundly muscular. And he doesn't have any physical traits that stand out. He is one of the most polished and skilled athletes of all time.
More than Kobe?
Yeah, Kobe would be right up there in the discussion, no doubt, for sure.
Kobe was my one.
But you got to realize Kobe's 6'6", Kyrie Irving 6'3".
Yeah, but he's so
3
smooth.
inches, a big difference in that.
And he was a better defender.
Yeah, Kobe was a better defender. There's no doubt about that. But, and my point is, again, back to sports can be I think sports can be such a source of stability for this country. And we're just kind of letting what's happening to sports culture be exactly what happened with American politics. I mean, it's kind of a spitting image of what happened there in D.C. We just let corporations take over and water down the real fiber of it. So,
Is the answer to just get it to be less political? Like, you know what sports is for me? It's a break from politics, right? And I mean, like Steve Bannon would be like, I don't watch sports. I don't take a break from politics. I eat nails for breakfast. But, some of us like actually need just like a little break from it. And, for me to go watch the Seminoles or watch the Miami Dolphins, it's a nice break. And I don't care what their politics are. And I don't really want to know. And I don't want to be involved. Now, there are others who would say, like, my buddy Jack Posobiec would say, no. What we have to do is we have to find our champions in fighting, in football, in basketball, and we have to make them marketable by making it political and being on their side and buying their stuff. So you take more the view of, no, actually, we don't have the right to sit back and just hope that it's not political. We've been getting trampled. The actual reality is the Posobiec reality, which is if Colby Covington, is going to wear a MAGA hat when he fights, then that means we get every pay-per-view that Colby Covington's fighting in. That's our obligation.
Well, and Bannon is a great friend of mine and mentor, and I don't think that he totally disagrees with that, because if not, me and him probably wouldn't have developed the relationship we did. I kind of came to know Steve through Jeff Quatnitz in the Big Three League, so I think he understands value. But yeah, 100%. You look at the communist Marxist strategy. Anywhere we're absent, they will fill the void. We know that. That's part of that's their modus operandi. So whether it's professional
sports, is it changing in Hollywood
music,
though? It seems to be changing in the culture now.
It's changing in popular culture writ large. And I think part of it is the MAGA movement's becoming counterculture. Now it just so happens we're counterculture, but we're also right. There's a fake counterculture, right? That was the goth kid in high school, is like, the whole world is shit and I just don't want to be a part of it. I'm super nihilistic. That's like theatrical counterculture. Real counterculture is you guys are wrong, and you've been wrong in a majority, and you try to bully the people who were right, and now we're starting to see it for the first time. So we're going to swing with the people who are the actual rebels. You're an actual rebel of DC politics. You stand up in the well of the Congress and go, all you people are bought and paid for. I'm sitting there at home going, yes, man. And I think a lot of people are like that. But last thing we'll talk about, I know you got to run, and I could talk to you all day like we do, but and we'll get you back on the show when you have time.
Yeah, man. I feel like we just got started.
Yeah. But last thing I want to talk about in this shutdown, let's talk brass tacks. In this shutdown, what do you see being the outcome, and what is your position in a general sense on continued resolutions, and at some point it's going to be, are we raising the debt ceiling? What is your feeling about this sort of political football that happens with these government shutdowns?
Well, I believe that governing by continuing resolution and by like one bill with everything all in it is largely driven by the lobbyist culture. Because the thing that lobbyists want to get away from is programmatic review. If you have something in, you just want everything to keep sailing on, and you get paid a lot of money to do that, and you slosh around a lot of money in everyone's campaign account, political account. You hire people's wives, girlfriends, kids, former staffers, whatever it is, to stay in that stead. So I have a view that is not in the majority, but I actually think that our federal government should operate the same way 40 of our states do, with a single subject requirement, so that a bill should only deal with one thing at a time. Because then you could at least focus people on that one thing and have a substantive, real discussion about whether or not we should spend money that way.
Amen.
But I have been unsuccessful in my pursuit of that objective. I even fired the guy who ran the place because he promised me he was going to do that and then didn't do that. And then the next guy didn't do it either. So now that is how it rolls. And the Republican House did something that I don't think was like deeply courageous, but they were just like, well, the same deal that Biden and McConnell and Johnson and Schumer negotiated, good enough for us, just keep it going for a while. And then Democrats, I think, felt pressure from their base that they just weren't doing enough to fight back, whatever that is when you lose the election. And so now they're withholding support for what they previously supported multiple times, just because they want to make some external demand on Trump to do these extra Obamacare coverages that, of course, will benefit illegal aliens. So that's the fight. I think in the end, Trump will make, Trump will try to steal the most popular elements of the Democrats' position and just make them his own. Like there are probably some people who are relying on these Medicaid credits that we don't want to rug pull. Trump was probably going to do that anyway. He may absorb some of that, brand it as his own, and proceed forward with an open government. That would be one path to exit. But at the end of the day, like there's a part of me sometimes, Royce, that's just like, if we fix everything else, like if we make a peaceful world, if we build up our culture, if we like kind of win, some of these key battles about identity, will it even matter if we spend so much money that America just falls? Like if we continue to go $1 trillion in debt every 100 days, do any of these things we're talking about really matter if the whole system crashes? Because I don't know another outcome other than mass austerity and a replacement for the dollar as the global reserve currency if we keep spending the way we're spending, and the increases are on the same trajectory. Well, so sorry about that for nihilist.
There is what got you ostracized there in Washington, D.C. That right there is the signal from the noise, ladies and gentlemen. Last question. I'm just going to throw this one out there at you. As somebody who spent time in Congress, I'm sure you were, oversight on a number of committees during your tenure. What do you make of this? What do you make of this UAP phenomenon? Let's talk UAPs to end here. What do you make of this? What's going on there?
Yeah, I've had some of the craziest meetings I've ever had about UAPs. I mean, I've had people enter my office in non-classified settings in military clothes who worked at military bases tell me about hybrid breeding programs where like aliens were being bred with humans. And,
whoa, stop the phone. Wait.
People on my
breaking
staff
news.
like,
wait, stop. Say it again.
I'm telling you, man, you're going to think I'm crazy. People are going to think I'm crazy. But in my office, a person walked in who was a member of the United States military, a current member of the military, and was describing the places where there were mobile hybrid breeding programs where humans were being bred with aliens for hybrid offspring for study. And I mean, my staff was just like, they didn't take it very seriously. They're like, this is just, who knows what this guy's
disinformation or something.
saying. Yeah, whatever. We sort of went on to our next thing. But, and I'm not suggesting that I believe that's happening, but just the fact that a meeting
Somebody
like that would occur is it puts this in kind of the like craziest stuff I've ever talked about category. I'm sure most of the UAPs are weather balloons or, the drones or technology that's being tested in some way. But I'm always skeptical when the government is really, really recalcitrant to answer questions, and when reasonable questions don't get honest, reasonable answers. Like, for example, have you recovered alien craft with biologics? Yes or no? We've had people testify under oath in Congress that the answer to that question is yes. So then when we ask it to people who are currently in power, we don't always get the same answer. And so both can't be true. And I think that we've got people like Tim Burchett and Anna Paulina Luna who care a lot about getting answers to those questions. And they know who is blocking them. They know who the people are deeply entrenched at the NSA and CIA who are blocking them. And I believe they will zero in on those folks.
Wow. Incredible. Okay, this is the last question. So that was the last one. We got 4 minutes.
No problem, man. I'm happy to chop it up with you all you want.
Yeah, I love it, man. We're appreciative to have you on. The great Matt Gaetz, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who, for some odd reason, don't know who this gentleman is. Okay, last question I have. Now, and this is a big one, so feel free to take however long you want to answer. But as I see it, this entire modern monetary theory, as you were alluding to about the debt, this modern monetary theory says, all fiat currency is really a fugazi in some sense, as long as we can create enough, quantitative easing, as a stopgap until we get to technological advancement good enough to get everybody on a more even playing field, or a more drug-induced video game style universal basic income playing field, all things are okay. There really is no debt. There really isn't a 40 or 50 trillion dollar number. We're $172 trillion in debt and unfunded liabilities. There's $4 quadrillion of global bank debt. So, I mean, what do you say as somebody who was in the Congress, which was obviously in charge of appropriations, other financial institutions like the Fed? What do you say about, the monetary theory versus, and even furthermore, who's holding the debt? Is there an actual institution or lobby per se, financial industry, whoever it is, who's holding the debt that threatens to be able to pull the Jenga piece out of America's economy?
We buy a third of our own debt. When we go out there and have to sell bonds, I mean the Fed's buying a third of those bonds.
Right.
So we're literally buying our own debt and holding it on a balance sheet. And if it was all just a game, if none of it really mattered, and it's just like, well, shoot, as long as people still want the dollar, let's just keep printing it, then there would be no inflation. Like we have the answer because we've lived it.
Right.
And so the people who want to sit around and have those discussions, and they're on the right and on the left, sadly, it's okay if we go into debt for war. The debt doesn't really matter. It's okay if we go into debt for Department of Defense spending because that's like really important. But at the end of the day, the debt's important because when people can't buy their groceries, you have fundamentally impacted quality of life in a far more significant way than dictating who is going to be governing Crimea. So when the cost of food, when the cost of energy is impacted, and we see it when we accrue the most debt, then we should not have to grab the stove again and again. But we do. Like the most pain we felt as inflation is not some accident. It wasn't El Nino. It was a direct consequence of too much spending during COVID and thereafter by Biden. And we shouldn't do it anymore. We should know better. And if printing more money just made you stronger, Zimbabwe would be the most powerful country in the world. But that's not how it works. And for all the criticism of Vladimir Putin, others have, and I have, the guy was actually a monetary conservative and allowed the ruble to crash and didn't go and just print more of it. And as a consequence, there's actually a lot of industrial and infrastructure investment in Russia right now.
Yeah.
In a weird way, our sanctions on Russia have done for Russia what Trump's tariffs have done for America. Because instead of the Russian oligarchs being able to spread their money all over the world, they now are like rebuilding Russia with their money. And in America, we're rebuilding productive capacity as a consequence of the tariff. So it's funny how that worked out.
Profound. Matt Gaetz, as sharp as it gets, ladies and gentlemen. We appreciate you having you on, brother. We really do. Tell us when you have a moment to stop back in, and we'll do another show. We got caught up in the sports.
Absolutely.
Couple of MAGA bros caught up in the sports talk for a while. But I do think, again, like I said, I think sports has a lot to offer American society. In many ways, it already does in places and we don't see. But we got to get these athletes off the woke train. If we could get these athletes on the sane train, let's call it, on the just right. We're not the far right. We're just right. If we get a lot of these athletes and other pop culture figures, then maybe they couldn't justify stealing every single election in, the Bronx, New York. It's just like, I'm not sure the Latin Kings are even casting ballots, but I'm just saying, I don't know how
They
they're
are.
doing.
Actually, if they're Latin Kings and not,
I know some Latin Kings. They don't vote
They
much.
probably voted for us. They probably voted
right.
our way.
Amen.
But look, man. Who's going to talk sports if not us?
That's
you
right.
were a first-round NBA draft pick, and my own sports career was cut short due to a lack of talent. So,
What'd you play? What sport did you play?
I played baseball. I loved baseball.
Yeah,
I was a catcher
America's
because
game.
you could throw the ball really hard.
Favorite
and I
player
was
all
fat
time.
and slow.
Favorite player all time, baseball.
Cal Ripken Jr., man. Just
Wow.
love the fact that the guy showed up. Love the fact the guy showed up and had sustained excellence and was a grinder. Love Cal Ripken Jr.
Best athlete of all time. Best athlete. Go.
Wayne Gretzky.
Pick a white guy? Are you kidding me?
Yeah. I mean,
Uh,
Would you put
It's
Wilt on
okay,
there?
man. You can pick the white guy, man. It's no problem. It's no problem, man. It's all
Dude,
good.
I met Wayne Gretzky at Mar-a-Lago
Wayne Gretzky's
a
a
few months
monster.
ago,
For
and the
those,
guy,
I'm joking,
Wayne,
okay?
Wayne
Wayne
Gretzky, I
is
think
a monster.
could whip your ass. I think he could whip your ass
that he
today.
couldn't do, but he was an incredible athlete, okay? Well, us MMA guys got a little bit better hands than the hockey guys. But listen, there's one sport that I respect as much as basketball, because basketball is a sport where all the players are involved in all the play at all times. It's hockey. Hockey is the action changes back and forth constantly, and you have to be on skates, handle a little puck. It's not easy, and you have to be worried about getting body checked. I mean, the hockey players I have great respect for.
Yeah, imagine baseball, but on ice while skating.
And you could just
terrible.
truck the pitcher if you wanted. You know, there's no mound.
Oh yeah, the permissive environment for fighting around hockey is just unlike any other sport.
I love it. I respect it. Hey man, I appreciate you stopping on. Good luck to you in the show, and we hope to see a return to an elected office, because we surely need the Matt Gaetzes of the world. They're in D.C. fighting for the American people, but. You know, in due time, at your pace, my friend.
We'll see what God has planned, man. I never try to stand in front of God's plans, but enjoy what I do now. Love being on OAN. Love having you on when you're free, and totally backing you for U.S. Senate. Hope it works out well.
Thank you, brother. God bless you, man. Godspeed.
All right, take care.
Everything's up on the bar. We're all in. We get to decide. Do you want to live on your knees, or do you want to die on your feet fighting? That's the decision you get to make now.